What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. We have a Q&A episode. We're going to go for about 45 minutes. I'm in my kitchen, 6 a.m. We're going to try and not wake everybody up upstairs. So you have these dulcet tones here. These, my voice a little bit more on the low side, but nonetheless, hopefully some good information. So first question. Hypertrophy program I follow is mostly all isolation movements for upper body, delt, bicep, tricep work with very few compound push or pull movements. Is this less ideal for upper body gains? I'm training for aesthetic and health goals. I mean, if you're not doing any you wrote delt, bicep, tricep work. So if you're only doing delts, bicep, triceps, then yeah, you're missing out on doing a lot of back work, which I think from an aesthetic perspective, most people would say that would be not the best plan, but also just for like general health and function. If you're not doing a lot of heavy pulling, I say heavy pulling, whatever. If you're not doing a lot of pulling, bilateral pulling, unilateral pulling, vertical pulls, overhead pulls, rows, pull downs, chin up variations, that sort of stuff, I think you're missing out for sure. Do you need to do a lot of bilateral pressing? You probably should, again, from like an overall health and function perspective, just in terms of training a lot of different movement patterns. Aesthetically, if you are a woman asking this, do you need to be doing a lot of bilateral heavy bench pressing and, a lot of pec work? Maybe not. Maybe that's not something you're interested in. But some, I'd say yes. I run a group program with, 80 to 90% women. We certainly have bilateral pressing in there, even if I know pec development isn't the most important thing to the group. We do some of it just from an overall health and function perspective. So yeah, if you're only training delts, biceps, and triceps, are you missing out? Yes, I would make sure you're training quite a bit of back as well through vertical and horizontal pulling and some stuff in between as well. And then, yeah, some bilateral pressing as well. Yeah, I think you'd be missing out if you were just doing delt, bicep, and tricep work. And sometimes you might be like, yeah, actually we are doing that. And so sometimes it's a little bit tricky. Just hearing it, not necessarily having me have a chance to look at the program per se. So hope that was helpful. Next question. Confused on how people say ignore the scale, muscle weighs something, but also keeping within 5 pounds of maintenance weight seems almost impossible. Yeah, I think that they're just mostly, it's ignore the scale, muscle weighs something is, I bet if I was asking the person who you're saying is saying that, there'd be a little bit more to that. I think ignore the scale, muscle weighs something is a tricky statement. I'm not sure I would ever say it so abruptly because you're not gaining so much muscle, right? You're not gaining so much muscle that it's like massively skewing your actual body weight, right? Like you don't, even in a perfect year of training, like an intermediate lifter might gain a couple of pounds of muscle, So it's not crazy skewing the scale. It can skew the scale when you first start training. Absolutely. It can skew it by quite a bit, and it likely will. I think ignore the scale, muscle weighs something, to me more powerfully refers to just the sentiment of, acknowledging that that number being smaller on the scale or that number being smaller doesn't necessarily represent what your goals are, and that you might have goals that involve being strong and muscular, and that you kind of need to rethink your value on the scale in terms of the number. What 140 pounds once meant to you might be different if you're trying to be really, really muscular. And so, yeah, ignore the scale, muscle weighs something. I'm not really sure. I think for people that are in a bulk that are really trying to build, yeah, that's absolutely a thing. But if you're at maintenance, I don't really think this applies a ton. It applies over year after year. So like if you've been at maintenance for 5 years and you're like have really hoped to have built muscle, like, okay, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how much muscle you built because your weight didn't change and muscle does weigh something. And if you've been putting on muscle, then maybe you'll see that weight gently tick up over the years. But in an acute sense, over weeks and months, maybe not so much. Next question. Are y'all thinking of moving from North Carolina already? We're thinking a lot of things. Our family's from New Jersey. North Carolina is like an 8-hour drive. Can we move closer to home but still have the quality of life that we want? I don't want this to turn into a therapy session, but You know, Jenna's home right now and she works in EMS, and that is a job that she, we think we can find for her almost wherever, whenever she'd like to get back to doing that. I work remotely. We have the freedom of living wherever we want. And so that's almost like it's almost a stressor, It's like, it's easier if it's like, I got to commute to this brick and mortar job I have in the city. And so now I need to be, attached to that place. We don't have that. So we have our family, but New Jersey's expensive as shit. And we don't really want to do that. And so, yeah, we're thinking about what our next move is. Right now, we're in a rental outside of Raleigh. We really love it here. It's really nice. It's still on the expensive side. So we're just mulling over. We have all of our options. We love North Carolina. We would love to find our forever home in North Carolina or north of here, somewhere between here and New Jersey, So I think we're thinking of a lot of things. Next question. Look into baby-led weaning for baby E. Right up your alley. She'll love it. So many benefits. Yeah, I agree that baby-led weaning falls into my MO as a person, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to automatically project all of like what I think, like baby-led weaning just being on the more independent side of the spectrum. So, more on the side of the spectrum that fosters maybe some element of independence and exploration and all that stuff. So it's something that I'm interested in for sure. But I just want my baby to eat, and I just want her to experience new foods. And I don't want to put too much pressure on ourselves to do. I know you're not doing this either, question asker, but I think that there's so much pressure to like, and I'm not picking on you for this, but it's like, like baby-led weaning, fosters better independence and it's stimulative and it's, helps. It's a learning experience and it's just like there's a lot of pressure to like always be doing a thing that's like incredibly, what is the word? Enriching. It's just like a lot of pressure sometimes. And so, yeah, anyway, I think we are absolutely looking into baby-led weaning. There was an app that we were just looking at that we've watched a bunch of YouTube videos. But we're open to whatever. I just want my baby to eat. I just want her to be healthy and happy and, experience new foods and have a good experience with food and all that stuff. So we have thought about all of it. We just got one of those baby food processors in case we want to go, well, which I'm sure we'll do at some point also, just make purees for her and stuff like that is something I really can't wait to do. So, I got to tell you, we are not know-it-alls on this. We are certainly just dipping our feet into this. But she will begin solids, I'm sure, within the next 4 to 6 weeks. So I will keep you posted on stories, I'm sure. Next question. Something hurt on the lower part of my left bicep. I'll tell you right now, pain is incredibly hard to talk about in these Q&As. Something hurt on the lower part of my left bicep when doing any bicep exercise. Happens only in left arm. It's like a small vein that hurts. Checked every exercise and made sure form is good. Only happens and only in left arm. Any idea what to do, what I should check? The truth is, for me, the first thing I would do is try and isolate exactly what exercises bother it. Then how little can I modify those movements to relieve pain? So if it's like, my this hurts, it hurts when I do bicep curls, but it doesn't hurt when I do hammer curls. Or it hurts when I do bicep curls, but not when I use the cables. Or it hurts when I do bicep curls, but not when my arm is in line with my torso. Or it hurts when I do pulling exercises, but not when I use an underhand grip, or not when I use my Versa grips, or not when I use a wider grip. So I would try and identify the exercises that hurt, and then I would try and modify them as little as possible to get it done. Okay, next question. My slipped disc, and I need a break from RDLs. Best sub. So I'm not picking on you, question asker, but I run a group with almost 1,000 people in it, and we do a lot of discussion around swaps. Sometimes you're asking for a swap where the only logical swaps for that exercise are exercises that are incredibly similar. So if you're like, oh, my X hurts while I do RDLs. Well, all of the swaps for RDLs are basically other forms of RDLs, right? Like other hinge exercises. If someone's like, oh, what should I do instead of RDLs? Like, what's the best swap for RDLs? The best swap for RDLs is good mornings. Well, good mornings are just RDLs with the bar on your back, right? The best swap for RDLs might be B-stance RDLs, single leg RDLs. So a 45-degree hip extension is pretty darn close. So if you can do 45-degree hip extensions, but again, that's a hinge exercise that your lower back's going to have to work. And I just, it's almost like if your lower back hurts doing RDLs, then all of the swaps for RDLs probably hurt too. So a lot of times people are, oh, my elbow, again, my elbow hurts during bicep curls. What swap should I do? It's like, well, if it hurts during, the best swap for a bicep curl is going to be a different bicep curl. And so if the elbow hurts during all of them, we have to accept that you're not, in this case, looking for a like for like swap, right? Instead of it being the same movement pattern, maybe we just hit the same muscle group. So with RDLs, the best swap for an RDL might be what we would say, I would say like killing it in the aggregate, meaning recreating that stimulus with other exercises. It might take more than one, right? The RDL works the hamstrings and the glutes really well. You might say, well, instead of doing RDLs, I'll do an additional hamstring curl and I'll do a glute bridge, right? And between those two, we can net a similar stimulus. Or, I'll do another split squat in addition to another, hamstring curl variation. It's unlikely, if RDLs hurt, that you're going to find a like for like swap for RDLs that does not hurt. You might though, you might. And so if you want to start with step one is pick a similar movement pattern with a slight modification. Maybe that works. If that doesn't work, then say, find what muscle group is being worked and work it in a different, with a different exercise that doesn't hurt. And if that doesn't work, because maybe it's like, oh, my hamstring is torn. What's a good swap for RDLs? It's like, well, dude, working any hamstrings is going to hurt. So you might be going from swapping for a movement pattern, can't do that. Swapping for a like for like muscle group, can't do that. So you might be talking about a swap of just inputting another exercise for a different muscle group that you enjoy, that doesn't hurt. So I would try, for starters, again, I don't know, I think you should go through that kind of triage, but I would just do another hamstring curl. So if you're like, my lower back hurts, it's like, okay, are you doing seated ham curls? And you're like, yes. It's like, okay, well, do lying ham curls instead of RDLs, or do a lying ham curl, glute bridge combo or something, or do them both in your program somewhere. I think that might help. My pull-ups feel like I'm getting weaker. My upper body is strong, but these seem to be a huge struggle for me. Help. Pull-ups are really fucking hard. And I just put out a newsletter last week about how to get your first pull-up. So make sure you sign up for the newsletter. It's really tough. It's going to be impossible for me to help you here. I don't know what you've been doing. Maybe you have a really strong upper body, but you've been gaining weight, right? So really quick recap on how to do pull-ups, how to get your first pull-up. Getting your first pull-up is down to three things. Number one is getting a really strong back. So get a really strong back. Have 2 to 3 back exercises in your program, pulling on a variety of angles, sometimes overhead, sometimes perpendicular to the torso, sometimes in between, sometimes from low to high, whatever. Get a really strong back with a variety of pulling movements. Number 2 is practice doing chin-ups. And what that means is have a specific chin-up like variation in your program. There are certain adaptations that you gain as far as the skill of doing chin-ups that you can only gain by doing chin-up like things. So things like eccentric only chin-ups, things like, flex arm hang, where you're holding the chin over the bar, things like band assisted chin-ups, machine assisted chin-ups, dead hang hollow holds, whatever. Have something in the program that is specific to the skill of doing chin-ups. And then the third is acknowledging that it's a strength to weight ratio, meaning, everyone's like, oh, I'm really strong, got a really strong back. It's like, cool, but it's strength to weight ratio. Like the people who can do the most chin-ups are not 200 pounds. The people who can do the most chin-ups are 120 pounds. So I'm not suggesting that you lose weight. I don't know you, and would never blindly suggest that to anyone. I'm suggesting you acknowledge that, hey, a chin-up isn't just about being really strong. Like, you need to be really strong per pound of body weight. And not just that, by the way. Weight distribution is a thing. Jenna and I both chuckle that, we're both, on average, a little bit more bottom heavy. And that makes chin-ups harder. It's like, I'm 190 pounds, but somebody else might be 190 pounds, but they store a lot less weight in their lower body. They have a lot more muscle in their upper body. And that's going to make chin-ups easier. The best people who, people who do the most chin-ups are probably like gymnasts who have these crazy strong upper bodies. and weigh 130 pounds or whatever. So those are my pieces of advice. I'm not sure which of those you need help with, but I would look in those buckets. Next question. How much does it cost you to use Mighty Networks and Train Heroic for your clients? Train Heroic doesn't charge you anything. They just take a percentage of each person in your group. So if I won't give exact numbers. I'm not sure that that's like the most, if you want to look this stuff up, you want to talk to Train Heroic, you can. But let's say you use my Instagram link and you sign up for my group. That means you came through me. And that's better for me. Train Heroic takes a small percentage, very small percentage. But if you go to the Train Heroic website and you find me through their website, they take a large percentage, or let's say a larger percentage. So it's like if they got me the client, they take a larger percentage. If I got me the client, they take a smaller percentage. And I will say it's very fair in my opinion. Working with Train Heroic has been excellent. I have a wonderful rep that I speak to. No app is perfect. I'll say the app is not perfect for my group, but it's not my app. So, just because I do things a certain way doesn't mean that the app is supposed to be perfectly designed for exactly what I want, but it is beyond good enough. I love the app, and we've done really well with it. Really like it. Mighty Networks, there's 3 tiers. There's I don't know what the names are, but let's say tier 1 is or the lowest tier. I don't know what these things cost. I'll tell you there's 3 tiers. There's a cheaper tier, then there's a middle tier, then there's a mega expensive tier that's like $30,000 a year where you get your own branded app. And it's basically like you get your own branded app and you get a ton of help from Mighty Network. Like Mighty Network's like, hey, you get a weekly call with a rep, you get this, you get that. I've thought about doing that and I set a goal for myself. If I get to a certain point with Mighty Networks that I will do that. I'm in the middle tier and I'll tell you right now, I already don't need the middle tier. It's called Path to Pro. I don't think I needed it. But at the time, I was almost going to do the Pro because I was like, hey, invest a ton of money in this and you will be very motivated to make it work and you'll get all this help. But I was a little gun shy. So I picked the middle tier. But Mighty Networks, if you pick the cheaper tier, is not super expensive at all, I think. And Train Heroic is very fair, a very fair price. Next question. Do you work out with a sore throat and feel a little off or take a rest day? It's entirely up to you. I think when it comes to being sick, if you have like a head cold, a little sore throat, maybe a little, I think that you're okay to train within reason. If I have something below the throat, if I have a lot of congestion in my chest, I will not train. And that's a bit dichotomous. It's like a bit simplified. The truth is, here's the truth. Taking a rest day is totally fucking fine. Totally fine. Dude, you're sick? Take a rest day. It's fine. In the scheme of the next 10 years of your training, it will make no difference in your life whatsoever. Seriously. So there's no consequences to the answer of this question. You could take a rest day. You could work out. Neither will make or break anything. That's the answer to this question you need to hear is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So do what feels right. If your gut is saying what feels right is for me to drink some water, and go for a walk or drink some water and sit on the couch and get back to it on Monday, no problem. I'll tell you right now, I'll give you an example. We had family staying with us and Tuesday night, whatever, I'm oversharing now, but I was having just some nighttime anxiety and I just was like, my chest was tight and I didn't sleep at all. It's just like didn't sleep a fucking wink. I gave my family my pillow and the other pillow that I was using was like literally a neck breaker. Like I was like snapping my neck trying to keep my head on this pillow. And I just was sitting there like, I'm not going to sleep tonight. And I just didn't. And so the next day I was like, again, feeling not my best. And I'm training for this 800. I do cardio, I lift weights, and I don't have the opportunity to take a bunch of days off and still get everything done. But to be honest, what was right for me was to take a rest day. I looked at Jen. I was like, I'm supposed to do this run today. I really want to stay on my program. I want to stick to my, I'm doing the 800 meter in about 10 days. And I was like, I really want to stick to it. And I looked at her and I was like, you know what though? Like it feels like my cortisol's jacked up. My chest is tight. I feel like I have like my sympathetic nervous system is jacked up. And I was like, you know what? The last thing I need right now is a hard workout that makes me only go into more of a sympathetic state. I was like, I need a 15-minute meditation, you know what I mean, sitting in the backyard or something. So I took a day off, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. I slept like a baby last night. I'm waking up today feeling like $1,000,000, and it was the right move. So I would go with what feels right, knowing that there's no real consequence here. Next question. Is there such a thing as a deload for cardio? Of course. There's a deload for everything that stresses you out. Any benefit other than sanity to a week off and maybe just hitting steps as a reset? How would you go about doing it if you were going to do it? Yeah, so we deload in my group program every 6 weeks. Some people out there in the industry listen, everybody does this differently. I think we can all agree that there's going to be some push and pull of stress and rest. How you set your clients up for success such that they stay physiologically feeling really good, psychologically feeling really good, enjoying the program, how people balance that work to rest ratio. Everyone's got a different philosophy. I prefer, so very generally speaking, I prefer a volume deload. What I mean by that is doing less work. And I like keeping the intensity high. So if I was deloading cardio, let's say, I might keep your paces all the same. But I just might do maybe less workouts per week or less intervals. So let's say you do 5 runs a week. I'm making that up. But maybe you do 2 runs that week. But you keep them, at a pace that is relatively challenging still. Or, let's say you do 5 runs, but each of those runs is, I'm making this up. This is a terrible program. But let's say they're all 5 by 5 minute intervals. You might do 5 workouts that week or 3 or 4 workouts. But instead of 5 5-minute intervals, you might be doing 3 3-minute intervals at the same pace. So I do deloads for both running and for lifting. And I prefer to keep the intensity. So if we're deloading with weights, I prefer keeping a decent proximity to failure, and I prefer keeping the weight pretty heavy. But I'll reduce the number of sets I'm doing. If we're doing this for running, I prefer keeping the runs not really hard, like killing yourself, but I like keeping them not a joke. It's not like I'm like, oh, this week I'll just do, a couple 15-minute easy, super easy jogs, which by the way, you can 100% do 100%. Oh my God, you can totally do this. I'll get to my final thoughts in a second. I would rather do a couple less workouts or shorter workouts, but keep them on the little bit more intense side. And the reason I like that is because it seems that intensity is a more powerful stimulus for muscle retention, or in this case, maybe speed retention. And a reduction in volume can actually bring a little bit more of a recovery stimulus. And it's also more time efficient. And so it's like I can train less time. I can keep the workout still kind of challenging, and I can get the adaptation maintenance that I want and the recovery benefit that I want, and I can do it in less time. So I prefer to do it that way. Now, I will tell you, if you're in my group or you're my one-on-one client, if there comes a week where you say, I want to take a week off everything, the gym, cardio, and I just want to walk or go to yoga or meditate or have more time for work, you have my blessing 1,000,000,000%. You do not lose muscle tissue in a week. You do not. You don't lose muscle tissue probably for like 3 weeks of inactivity. You might lose a little strength because neurological adaptations might go down a little bit. You might lose a little bit of speed because of some neurological adaptations. But that shit comes back super quick. And as long as you're not taking a week off every month, you're going to be fine. But I'll throw the ball back into your court. If you take a week off and you find it's really tough to re-engage, it's really tough to get back into the routine, you feel super weak and you feel like over the course of 6 months, you're not making any progress because you keep taking these weeks off, then maybe that's not the best thing for you to do. But I'll tell you this, if you've never taken a week off ever, it's glorious. It's absolutely glorious. I always come back feeling really refreshed. And more than anything, I come back with this vigor for training, like this immense motivation for training. So I think taking a week off is just fine. I think you're going to be in the context of, the 10 years of training, it's not going to make a difference. Unless you're doing it every month and unless your training overall sucks and you're just like, taking a week off a shitty program done inconsistently, yeah, that's going to be a problem. Taking a week off every few programs where you're really hammering it, I think you're going to be fine. Yeah, I know you're going to be fine. Okay, next question. How much should I worry about the barbell path on my squat? I have a very hard time keeping it straight instead of curved. Even when I only squat the barbell, I already use squat wedges. I'll tell you this, if you're not a power lifter, the answer is never. Never. I wouldn't worry about it at all, really. If you are a power lifter or you're really performance oriented, I think that there's probably some merit to taking a closer look at this. I don't think the best, if you go look at like powerlifter PR squats, I bet you it's not a straight bar path. So what this person's talking about is if you're looking at somebody squatting from the side, and just think about this very logically, the most efficient way to move is directly up and down. Like you are squatting down and you're standing up. So any horizontal translation of your center of gravity, so any movement horizontally when looking at the side, that's like, I'll call it like an energy leak, right? You're trying to go down and you're trying to go back up. So the most efficient in terms of energy use would be to keep it as linear as possible. Any energy you're expending where you're moving horizontally is a waste of energy. An example of this might be if you're a runner. If you're a runner, you're trying to go forward, right? You're trying to move horizontally. You're trying to move forward. So any movement upward, it's called vertical oscillation. Any movement upward, any excess movement upward is a waste. They say that, a novice runner who runs a marathon has traveled vertically the size of the Empire State Building, or like 5 Empire State Buildings, because they are so bad at running that they waste a lot of energy moving their body upwards. So the ratio of how much they move their body upwards versus how much they move their body forwards is very poor. And if you take like an elite marathon runner, they move like 1/5, right? So I forget the stat, but I think it's an amateur marathon runner will travel like 3 Empire State Buildings upwards, where an elite marathon runner will do like 1 Empire State Building. And so that's an example of an energy leak, right? I'm trying to go forwards. I don't need to be expending, and obviously with running, you have to go upwards. You can't just moonwalk the whole marathon, but we're talking about in excess. So when you're squatting, the best, most efficient way to move would be directly up, directly down. So you would want a bar path that is directly vertical. If you watch that bar go down, it should go down perfectly straight and come up perfectly straight. Now that is, if you were trying to be a power lifter and lifting the most weight, it was absolutely the most important thing, you'd work on movement efficiency. Of course you would, right? I'll tell you, myself, as somebody who wants to be strong and have muscle and be fit and strong and healthy and all that, I've never one time thought about that. Now, if it's egregious, if I'm like feeling myself topple over in the middle of the squat where like I go down, but then when I stand up, the bar flies forward or something, okay, yeah. The point is, if your squat has this egregiously bad bar path, it's probably going to feel like shit. So I would sooner solve for comfort and be like, hey, that squat looks uncomfortable and it looks like we could do something to make you feel better during that squat, instead of like, oh my God, your bar path's not vertical. We could, that's, breaking some rule that matters a ton. It doesn't. So I really wouldn't stress this a whole lot. If you are in my group program, send me a side view of your squat and we will talk about it. But you can be super mega jacked, fit, strong, and healthy, and a strong squatter without having some perfect barbell path. Next question. How long can we expect it to take for someone's body to no longer be adapted at a calorie amount? Example, they plateaued at X calories for 6 months, came back to maintenance, and then wanted to drop calories again. How long would it be until they lose weight at the calories they'd been plateaued at? The answer is never. Never. Here's the deal. Let me just make sure that you're asking what you're asking before I do this. They plateaued at X calories. So let's take a specific example. Let's say somebody's losing weight and they're getting 10,000 steps and they are 150 pounds and they are eating 1,700 calories and they're 150 pounds. Maybe they lost weight. They were 155. Now they're 150 pounds and they've been there for 6 months and they haven't lost any weight. Now they come back to maintenance and they go up to 2,100 calories. I make that up. How long would it be until they lose? Let's say they go back up to 2,000. So they were at 1,700 and they're back up to 2,000. How long would it be until they lose weight at the calories they've been plateaued at? The answer is never. Never. There is no such thing as, if I just go back to maintenance for a while, all of a sudden the calories I was using before that did not work will now work. Can you just, if you extrapolate that for a second, if you think that could keep working, you just go down to 1,700, lose some weight, then plateau, back to 2,000. Then you go back to 2000 or back to 1700 after a while, and you keep losing weight. Like, you'd be able to get incredibly lean without ever needing to eat less, right? Like, you imagine you could just keep cycling between going to 2000, going to 1700, going to 2000, going to 1700, and you could just keep losing weight. That's not how that works. So the answer is never. There is no such thing as I plateaued at X calories, and then I went to maintenance for a while, and then I came back to those same calories and without changing anything else, because a lot of people are like, well, I did this and it worked. It's like, yeah, because you started tracking more accurately and you started getting more steps more consistently. But all else being equal, if these calories didn't work at this body weight before, there is nothing you can do to make them work in the future. So now, that doesn't mean that if a person has been plateaued for a while, that bringing their calories up a tiny bit isn't a good plan practically. It might be a good plan practically because you're probably dealing with somebody who needs a break from the pursuit of fat loss, mentally speaking. None of the calorie cycling, right? So none of this, like, people make it sound super fancy. What do people call it? This, like, nutrition periodization. None of this is a physiological consideration. None of this has to do with your fixing your metabolism or keeping your metabolism up or, keeping you cutting on high calories. No, that's none of it. None of that happens. Nutrition periodization, the use of refeeds and diet breaks and maintenance phases is all an appeal to psychology, which, by the way, is powerful. When I say this, I'm not saying don't use that stuff. And appeal to psychology, dude, psychology and practical, like, appeals to lifestyle are mega powerful when it comes to helping your clients lose weight. Trying to find a strategy that matches their biofeedback, how they're feeling psychologically about their goals. Oh my God, it's mega powerful. But no, you can't be at 1700 calories, plateaued, then go to 2000, then go back to 1700, and all of a sudden it's a deficit. No, there's so much research that shows that this is not how that works. And if you extrapolate that out, you could just keep doing this and keep losing weight and never have to eat any less. Sorry. You can't see me, but I got my hand swinging in the air with a spoon in it. If you extrapolate that out, that strategy could get somebody really lean without ever needing to eat very little. And it's just not how that works. Additionally, like, metabolic adaptation happens immediately. You're metabolically adapting all the time. We fast people for, 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours. And within those 24 hours, we see metabolic adaptation. It's happening immediately. It's not like you can go up to 2000 and then you dip back under to 1700 and your body takes months to adapt again. These adaptations happen immediately. Sorry, I get a little fired up. You guys know, some of you guys know that's a bit of my shtick here. All right, over the next few weeks, when I do Bulgarian split squats, I get shooting pain in my right quad and knee that lasts for days. Then any exercise after hurts as well, to the point I'm in tears. I'm in a half marathon, October 26th. Should I skip them until after? Yeah, totally. 100%. Should you skip a thing that puts you in tears? Yes. You should probably skip them after and go see a physical therapist or work together closely with a coach to try and identify what's going on. I'm glad you didn't ask me about the pain, though, because it's incredibly challenging to know what's going on here and what you should do about it. But yeah, I would absolutely skip them. Good luck in your marathon. Where are we at? 6:40 here? All right, we'll keep going until baby wakes up. I'm ending a cut and going to maintenance. I always screw this up. I cannot eat intuitively. Guess I need to continue to track my meals to be successful. How to navigate this phase long term? I have a do I have a podcast on that? I think my podcast is how to stop tracking and start eating mindfully. Search for that podcast. I think it will have some overlapping benefits here. Yeah, work with a coach, please. Just like work with somebody. And if you really mess this up, most people mess this up for a couple of reasons. The first is they add in too many calories back at once. Now, I think you can add in all of the calories that you are currently in a deficit. You can undo the deficit immediately. So if you're still in a 300 calorie deficit as per your weight trend, you can add back 300 calories immediately. But if you've been plateaued for the last 3 months, don't add 500 calories. Add 200 calories and see how it goes. So don't add too much too quick. If you've been plateaued, like if you haven't lost weight in the last couple of months, don't jump up 500 calories. And the second is, for now, keep doing what you've been doing. If you've been tracking your calories, you've been weighing stuff on a food scale, keep doing it. You might not need to do it forever, but if you add back calories and you try and be more flexible with your approach both at the same time, that might not be the best plan. Listen, what I want for people is I want people to maintain a body that they enjoy, that can do things they enjoy, and a lifestyle they enjoy with as little work as possible. So we want to attack both of those fronts. We want to be able to peel back from some of the meticulous nature of tracking if that's what you want to do. We want to do that over time. And we also want to get you back to a calorie amount that affords you a lifestyle you really enjoy. But maybe don't do both of those things at the same time, right? Like maybe don't add back calories and move to a more flexible approach at the same time. That would be my advice. And work with a coach, man, because there isn't a perfect way of doing this. Like I hear you type this out and I'm like, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people through this process, and it's all been a little bit different, right? People have different relationships with tracking. People have a different lifestyle. People have, different experiences in the past that make them gun shy for certain things. So work with a coach who's going to get to know you on a more intimate basis to help develop a strategy that works best for you. I am a big believer in the idea of really, really slow reverse dieting as some sort of metabolic hack. It's just factually not a thing. But if you feel okay and you're real nervous about what might happen if you add a lot too quick, then you can add a little slower. There's nothing to say you can't, as long as you feel okay, right? As if someone feels like crap and they're super hungry, mega food focused, super lethargic, fatigued, yeah, I'd go a little faster for sure. Next question. I've got a wound that won't go. The reason I'm asking is I've been in a deficit for a while now. Would that cause me to slow down recovery? It would. By how much? I don't know. That's not my area of expertise, but absolutely, 100%. You will heal less quickly in a deficit, for sure. I see so much mixed info on collagen. I personally like adding a scoop to my coffee to give me a small protein boost. Is it a scam or a little is fine? So, collagen 101. So, the idea that, collagen is, all protein, I don't know how deep to go on this. All protein is made up of amino acids. And certain amino acids have certain benefits in the body. It's mostly important that you just get a lot of them, right? Or you hit the threshold needed for each of them, which most people never need to worry about. If you just eat enough total protein, you're getting enough total amino acids. Now, collagen is unique insofar as it's really high in one amino acid called glycine. And glycine is important in terms of, let's just call it, it's important in the realm of hair, skin, nail, bone, tendon, ligament, right? Things that are made up of collagen to some degree. So the idea was, if I eat this collagen protein that's really high in glycine, then it will break down into its constituent amino acids in my body, and then it will go on to help my collagen in my body. That's the hypothesis. I eat collagen, it's high in glycine. Glycine helps, build collagen in the body, repair collagen, hair, skin, nails, bone, ligament, tendon, all that stuff. The research we have, though, is not promising. We have some research on hair, skin, and nails that it might do something. So here's my take. If you are worried about your hair, skin, and nail growth, take a little collagen, or take a glycine supplement. Go to thorne.com, Thorne supplements. They have a really great glycine supplement. My take is, if that was a big concern of mine, if I was like, hey, I really want to start growing, my nails need to grow back, which they probably do. My hair is falling out, or I want to make sure I have good hair health. My skin health is really important to me. I'd take a flyer on it. I'd take a chance. I'd take a little collagen. But collagen is really low in other amino acids that are important for muscle growth. And so I wouldn't make collagen a large portion of my total protein intake. But if you eat enough total protein, listen to me carefully. If you eat enough total protein, and some of that is from collagen, you're good to go. Totally fine. But if you're like, yeah, I eat I eat, I eat 0.6 grams per pound, which is like, it's on the lower end. It's not that, I think that that's still fine, and you could build plenty of muscle that way. But if you're like, hey, I eat 0.6 grams of protein and half of that comes from collagen, it's like, well, I wouldn't be surprised if you're not building the maximum amount of muscle that you could. So if you're like, yeah, I eat enough to, and I say this because most people eating enough collagen, I'll say it this way. If you're eating enough total protein and you have a little collagen, you're good to go. Don't think about it. Track it, count it. You're fine. You're going to build muscle. Don't worry about it. But if you're not eating enough protein and you're using collagen, I would just change out that collagen for a complete protein source like a whey or egg white or vegan protein powder. And then if you want to take a glycine supplement, I might go that route. But I would say if you're eating enough total protein and you spend a little bit on these incomplete proteins, you're good to go. You're totally fine. It's not a scam. I think that it's overhyped. I think the marketing of it is scam-like. It's like scam adjacent. People talk about it like it's a panacea, like it definitely does something. That the way people talk about it is overhyped to like beyond belief. The amount of money that has been made off of like basically no research is insane. But if you eat enough total protein, you want to take a chance on it. Yeah, I would. People are. It's like if you're like, hey man, I really want to get better sleep. I think there's so many lifestyle things you should be doing. By the way, ironically, glycine is a decent supplement for sleep as well. But you're like, should I take a magnesium supplement before bed? I'm like, I'd try it, I'd see if that helps, maybe, it's one of those things where like, if this thing is really important to you, then I'm willing to do things that might help a tiny bit, right? So long as I'm doing the other big rocks too. Next question. I understand cardio isn't needed for fat loss, but I'm more interested in building endurance so I can keep up with my kids. That's cool. I love that. I'm at a point where I can run, walk, hike better than me. They can run, walk, hike better than me, and they're all under age 7. What type / how much cardio would you recommend? I weight train 4 times a week. Yeah. It depends. I'll start by saying if you're doing no cardio, then any cardio is going to be incredibly helpful. It's like being like, hey, I don't lift any weights. Like, what sort of weightlifting should I do? It's like, well, if you do anything, it's going to help. So don't stress needing it to be perfect. The second question I have for you is how much additional time do you have to train? I'm going to try and keep this answer short, but how much additional time do you have to train? If you're like, I have 1 day of cardio per week, 2 days of cardio, 3 days of cardio, 4 days of cardio, I have 2 hours to devote to this, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, the answer will change. I think if you had 1 day of cardio, I might alternate week to week with something lower intensity this week and something higher intensity next week, meaning maybe a zone 2 session for 30 to 60 minutes this week, and then next week, maybe an interval session where you're working hard for like 3 to 10 minutes, then you take a little break and you do that a few times. If you were training twice a week, I might do 1 higher intensity day, 1 lower intensity day. I say higher intensity doesn't necessarily mean you're going, balls to the wall, crazy sweaty. I mean, working, let's say we're using the word run. When I say run, I just mean cardio. You could do a bike, you could swim, you could do a rower, whatever. But when I say higher intensity, let's say you're doing faster work where you're working harder for a shorter period of time, and another day where you're working less hard for a longer period of time. If you were training 3 days a week, and my friend Brian had a post about this, if you're training 3 days a week, I'd probably have 2 higher intensity days and 1 lower intensity day, and maybe I'd alternate weeks where the next week I have 2 lower intensity days and 1 higher intensity day. Just because you're also doing a lot of weight training, I would want to make sure that you're navigating the fatigue scenario and making sure that you're recovering pretty well. If you had 4 days of training, I'd say 2 higher intensity days, 2 lower intensity days. Most people aren't training 8 times a week, so I doubt that you're like, yeah, I could do cardio 4 days a week in addition to my 4 days of lifting. It's like nobody with kids has that much fucking time. So my guess is you have between 1 and 3 days to devote to this. So if you had 1 day, I would say this week do 30 to 60 minutes, zone 2. Zone 2 just means pretty easy. And if you want more info on zone 2 training, search my podcast for zone 2. There's a couple podcasts, one with Dr. Alyssa Olenek, one with my friend Brian Borstein. And then if you, again, 1 day a week, then the next week I might do intervals where it's like, hey, we're going to do you know, something, maybe it's 10 by 1 minute intervals, or it's, you know, 6 by 3 minute intervals, or 5 by 4 minute intervals, or 2 by 10 minute intervals, something where you're working harder for a shorter period of time. And again, all of those interval structures work. Anything from like 3 to 12 minute intervals is still challenging enough that we can call it higher intensity. So if you're like, hey, I did 2 by 12 minute intervals, yeah, that's higher intensity. That's awesome. I love that. My group is my group. So in my group program, we have 4 days a week training, or 3, both are available, and I give 2 optional cardio days. So I think that's a good example. So in my group, we have 4 or 3 days of training and 2 very optional cardio days. One of them is always zone 2 training. The other one is always something higher intensity. This week we're doing, or this next program, I'll tease it out. We're doing what I'm calling it this sub-threshold myo reps. Sounds fancy, but anybody who knows me knows I love myo reps when it comes to lifting. And after experiencing the idea of myo reps in cardio, I'm kind of obsessed. I absolutely love it. So we'll be doing that. I think it's kind of fun. All right, we'll take it to the hour. 7 more minutes here, or get it through a couple more. All right, I'm a female in my mid-50s working on building muscle. That's awesome. Fuck yeah. I lift weights 4 times a week. I find I add cardio on other days. Oh no, here we go. Same question. I find when I add cardio on other days, I don't recover well. I could cut down to 3 sessions a week, but my priority is muscle. But I know cardio is important too. Not sure how I should structure those things. So because your priority is building muscle, I would do cardio lower intensity. I would say, hey, the truth is, if you lift weights, zone 2 training almost adds no fatigue if you do it right. So if you're saying I'm not recovering well, my bet is that those cardio days are too challenging. I would say, can you do 2 days of 30 minutes of zone 2? I bet you if you do that, you should experience no increase in fatigue. If you do, my bet is that your zone 2 training is too challenging. Zone 2 training, somewhere 60 to 70% max heart rate. Again, that's super loose. It could even be a little higher than that. Zone 2 training is easy, something that you could hold while keeping a conversation. I always tell my clients, if I call you in the middle of your zone 2 session, you should be able to pick up and we should be able to have a 15-minute chat, and you should be totally okay with that. Now, I would know that you're exercising. I would hear that you're exercising, but you would not have a very strained conversation. You wouldn't be like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, I'm on the bike. That person is not in zone 2, right? You should be able to say 10 to 15 word sentences without having, some sort of breathing deficiency, meaning like you shouldn't be like, yeah, I'm, some sort of putting yourself in some sort of breath deficit, right? Where you really need this like huge breath to catch back up. So my bet is your cardio that you're doing is too challenging or too long, a combination of both. I bet you if you add 2 30-minute zone 2 sessions, for a lot of people, that's like a very, very leisurely incline walk. So for me, zone 2 is like a 3 mile an hour on the treadmill with the max incline on. Or it's a very, very slow jog for me right now. For other people, it might be 2.5 on the treadmill, max incline, or 3 miles an hour on the treadmill with a 5 incline. I think incline walking is a really, 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 really great way of getting zone 2 training in. I think for most people, jogging in zone 2 is an oxymoron. You have to be pretty darn fit to run and have running be easy, right? I mean, like, I used to chuckle that easy running for me was an oxymoron. If I go out and I do anything that resembles jogging, I'm way above zone 2. So if that's you, don't be like, oh, I every time I jog, it's way too hard. It's like, yeah, I fucking bet it is, because you're not in amazing cardiovascular shape. So incline walking, Stairmaster, rower, elliptical is unbelievable. If I could go back in time, I would buy an elliptical. Just the low impact. Having a lower impact modality that I train on is really nice. And so, yeah, that's my answer. Next question. Do you think dumbbell, barbell, and bands will be enough to strengthen lats or pull-ups? No. I don't even need to read the rest of the question. Or would using cables more, especially in place of bands, be better? I currently can't do a pull-up, working on losing body fat, but the above is all my gym has to use to build lats. I wouldn't even think about it as building lats, by the way, because your lats are a huge fan-shaped muscle that are in charge of way more things than just pulling you upward. But yes, your lower lats are very involved in a pull-up. What I would say is, instead of saying strengthen the lats, I would say work on vertical pulling strength, right? So vertical pulling means your arm is overhead and you're pulling your body upward. So it's really hard to train vertical pulling without a machine, right? If you really think about it, you can't pull a dumbbell towards you. I mean, the only way to conceivably do that is if you were hanging upside down and pulling the dumbbell up towards you, which is, nobody's using their inversion chair, and I'm not even sure I would recommend it. So when you're training at home and you want to train vertical pulling, pull-up variations are your best bet. So again, pull-ups, which, you're saying, hey, I can't do pull-ups, so I can't train pull-ups, but you can train pull-up regressions like assisted pull-ups, band-assisted pull-ups, eccentric-only pull-ups. You could do rack chin-ups. You could do leg-assisted pull-ups, which I really think are a really awesome way to train vertical pulling. Of course, you should train with a lot of rows as well, because those muscles are, getting a strong back overall is really important. But it's difficult to train vertical pulling without machines. Now, you have bands, so you can do like a banded pull down, right? You can mimic some of those vertical pulling movements with bands, but yeah, if you're going to do that, I would make the bands really hard and almost to the point where you can't even pull the band all the way down. And the reason I would do that is to make it more challenging in the lengthened position, and I would train all the way to failure and beyond. The downside of bands is that they are most challenging in the short position when your muscle is fully contracted, and quite often there's a huge drop off in the lengthened position. So whenever we do banded pull downs in my group, we usually do lengthened partials. I usually say pick a band tension that's so heavy you can only pull halfway down, because I really want you working in that top half of the movement. So yes, if you can't do a chin up and you want to, having things like a lat pull down machine and an assisted pull up machine and a variety of pulling machines and cables so you can pull on more vertical angles is mega, mega helpful. If you don't have that, you need to be doing some sort of chin-up variation, right? Rack chins, leg-assisted chin-ups, band-assisted chin-ups, eccentric-only chin-ups, flexed arm hang, dead hang hollow holds. They need to, not all of them, but I would have at least one of those in your program at all times. Alrighty, last question, and then we have, we have quite a few more. Fuck. What's the youngest age you can take creatine? There is no research that allows me to make a specific answer to this question. It's not like we don't have a known inherent danger of creatine. So there's no like, oh, it's dangerous until this, or it would be dangerous if this. We have no known inherent danger of creatine. So if you were like my 8-year-old started taking creatine, like I couldn't tell you that that's a bad idea. I could not tell you. So I'm a new dad. What do I think about this? What my kid comes to me, at what age am I going to say that's okay they take creatine? I think if they eat a decent amount of animal meat, if they're like eating, so creatine is found naturally in animal proteins. I probably would say it's unnecessary for a smaller kid, just because the amount of creatine they would need is quite small. And if they're eating meat in their diet, they might be getting enough that way. It's hard to top out your creatine stores with just meat. Not impossible though. I mean, carnivore people do it, I'm sure, but most omnivorous people don't. Damn. I might say that as soon as my kid starts lifting weights, I think it's okay for them to take creatine. Now, I might revisit that later, but I think if my kid is lifting weights consistently, I would be okay with them taking creatine. That is the age at which I'd say it's okay. Next question. I know I just broke my own rule. How long have we been going here? I can't even tell. All right. 53-year-old female, strength training 3 times a week, doing light cardio / Pilates 3 times a week. Do I need to take a collagen supplement? I answered this one. I love you to death. I don't think that you need to take collagen for any of the reasons that have to do with lifting and Pilates. you would take a collagen supplement if you really, really, really wanted to take a chance on maybe there's a benefit for hair, skin, and nails. Next question, what would minimums for staying healthy look like for lifting cardio during a busy week? I think you can be, generally speaking, I think you can get, I'm going to put a percentage on this, but please don't quote me on this. There is no way of knowing how true this is, like down to a percentage. I'd say you can get confidently north of 80% of the health benefits of exercise with 2 days of lifting and 2 days of cardio. And that's actually probably a conservative answer. I think you might be able to get more than 80% of the benefits. Like lift strength training twice a week for 5 years, you're as strong as you'd ever need to be for life. Seriously, like you're not jacked doing that. You're not, you don't take your shirt off and people are like, oh, that guy fucking lifts, man. Like, but you are as strong as you need to be for life. Doing cardio twice a week, I think that's where you'd have room for more benefit with more. Like you might get 66 to 70% of the benefits of cardio doing, let's say, one 60-minute zone 2 session and one 30-minute higher intensity session. I think, let's say 75% of the available health benefits of exercise with 2 days of 30 to 45 minutes lifting and let's say 2 days of 45 minutes of cardio, 30 to 45 minutes of cardio. 1 day, 60-minute low intensity, 1 day, 30 minutes, so 90 minutes of cardio. So that's what I would say. I mean, listen, people always crack up there. Oh, the CDC, the government wants to keep you sick. Like that's literally what the government recommends. They're like, hey, you should lift weights twice a week and do cardio twice a week. Anyway, don't let me go down that road. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Is walking too low intensity to do anything beneficial? No, absolutely not. I'm gonna be honest here. Walking is incredible for so many parts of your health, mental and physical and cardiovascular. But is there a lot of meat still on the bone for doing higher intensity cardio? Absolutely. Like you cannot tell me that you are optimally healthy. And I say optimal to emphasize the idea that you are the most healthy possible if you never get your heart rate up, let's say. But again, if you're like, hey, this is a very classic scenario. Someone's like, hey, I lift weights. I'm a healthy body composition. I eat a nutritious diet and I get a lot of steps. Am I missing out on a lot by not doing higher intensity cardio? I don't think you're missing out on a lot. I think you can have really, really high quality cardiovascular health. Are you missing out on some things? Of course you are. Of course you are. Right? If you're thinking of health as a pie chart, is there a portion of that pie chart that is only filled in by higher intensity cardio? Of course. What is the size of that? Well, we don't know. We don't know. Can you be very generally healthy and have a wonderful life and good cardiovascular health with lifting, walking, not having too much body fat, eating a nutritious diet, and, again, a lot of walking, being outside, mental health, stress management, all that stuff? Yes, totally. But is there an independent part of that pie chart of health that is covered by higher intensity cardio? Absolutely. So walking is incredible, incredible, incredible. And if you're not walking enough, if you're not outside, if you're not getting at least 8,000 steps, that is the lowest hanging fruit to improve your health on a multitude of levels. But yeah, you're gonna put me to the sword here and say, is there more meat on the bone for higher intensity cardio? Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we're gonna pin it there. I'm gonna make breakfast for my girls, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for asking all the questions.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Where Optimal Meets Practical. If you liked the episode, it would mean the world to me if you posted a screenshot to your social media or left a 5-star review on iTunes. That stuff really helps. If you ever want to get in touch with me, just shoot me a DM on Instagram @JordanLipsFitness. I'm always around to chat. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.